Hello, in this video I will demonstrate how to isolate programming layer from your R Markdown document. So let's say that we have a RStudio project, we'll call it R Project 1, and its home directory is, let's see, is my documents, class demo temp, and project 1. So this is the folder where this project is located. You can also see it by clicking this icon, and it brings me to this address. Let us further say that we have a sample report located in our analysis subfolder, a my report subfolder, and here's our RMD file, my report-1 RMD. Here's this file that we can knit into a HTML document. Right, so let's make sure that it runs. Here we click knit, and it produces an RMD, an HTML document with this report. Well, let's look at this R&D document a little closer and remind ourselves that this document combines two layers. One is so-called annotation layer, right? This is our comments and our narration of what we're doing with the data. And our programming layer, this is actually what is being done inside R, the manipulation, the tasks that are being done on data objects. So here we have two chunks that perform certain operations on the dataset cars and the dataset pressure. It is very useful to have these two layers intertwined in the same report, in the same document when you're writing it, because you can easily see what is being done and then narrate it. However, there's some drawbacks to this. First drawback is that sometimes, most of the times, or quite often, this code can get quite large. It could be very unwieldy to store in the RMD chunk, and it sort of breaks down the rhythm of you writing the report itself. Secondly, there might be other parts of the script that you don't want to show to the reader of this report. So there might be other chunks that you just want the computer to run, but you never intend to be represented in the report. These are the main reasons that are relevant at this point, but there are some other reasons as well. So the bottom line, we want to separate this programming layer from our annotation layer into a separate R script that would host all the tasks that computer will do, and then we'll add the annotation layer with an R&D document. So it's useful to remember this fundamental formula of HTML production. R plus RMD produces HTML. So this is our programming layer, this is our annotation layer, and combined they produce an HTML. So this video will demonstrate how this is done. So first, let's save this report as a new report because we'll use it as a starting point for our separated or isolated layer report. So we save this, and let's create a new report that we'll call my report 2. My report 2, and I will save, so I'll create a folder to host all the files in this report, and I will rename this to be my report 2, and I click save. So now let's double check. Let's go back to the root, go to data analysis. Now we have the second folder, and in that second folder we have the RMD document produced. Okay, next step, we would like to create a corresponding R document that would host these programming commands. So let's go ahead and click on File, New File, R script, and we will save this R script into the same directory as my report 2, and we'll call it also my report 2. So now, nope, I want this to be the extension of R instead of RMD. So now you have two files that are named identical. Again, this is not mandatory for it to run, but it's useful to name them the same so that you can keep track which one is connected to which. But the only difference would be the extension of that. One is RMD that hosts the annotation layer, and one is R that hosts the programming layer. As customary with our scripts, we want to start our script by these two lines that would clear the memory from all the previous runs. So it would purge the environment from every variable and object that you define. And also it will clear the console when working in RStudio. So that's very useful to have in your script. Now we need to look at the structure of RMD, and specifically we can look at the names of the chunks. So we have three chunks here. One is called setup. This is a default chunk within our RMD, so we don't want to mess with this. We'll leave it as is. But here we have the chunk called cars and the chunk called pressure. Now the names, you don't have to name your chunks. However, if you want to connect and isolate your programming layer to a separate document, you do need to name your chunks, because this is how the R document will know where to look for. So let's go to my report and create these chunks. So one called car, one called pressure. So we do this by starting £1 key or hashtag, 4 dashes, and then space, and then the name of the chunk, space, and then arbitrary number of dashes. And also the same thing for the chunk called pressure. Okay, so now if we go and take this statements from our RMD and place them here, right? So the idea is that here we have only the annotation, but then the instructions of what to do are stored in this file that actually carries out these instructions. Okay, so let's say that we save these two reports, and if we run it right now, change the name to my report 2. If we run it right now, we'll have a blank report. Well, not entirely blank. It will have the annotation layer, right? Because this is, again, this is just a text document that we knit into HTML. But it doesn't have anything, nothing happens. Well, that's because this document, this RMD, does not know where to reach into how to find this file in order to carry out these instructions that are stored in these chunks. So this is what we need to do next. The way we can communicate to the RMD document where it's supposed to reach in order to get the content of these R chunks is using read chunk function. So this is again a function in the knitter package, and we specify read chunk. It usually takes its one mandatory argument, so this is not necessary to name it, but that's the only argument you say. So we can direct it to our report, to our R script. So where is our R script related? So with relation to the project one, we can say, okay, so it's a root analysis, then folder my report 2, and then the R script called my report 2.r. If we run it like this, let's try it. Let's try to knit it. It would produce a very common error that you will encounter. So it's important for us to recognize it. So cannot open the connection. Well, that error tells you that it just cannot find this file, right? So let's investigate a little further. So let's once again put the getwd right here, and disable this so that if we run the entire chunk, it will give us the output. Well, that's why. It knows, it thinks that the root directory here of this document is analysis my report 2, which is not the case. So if we say go ahead and find this file, so literally what we're saying by line 11, we're saying go ahead and find this file, right? We just attach it further like this, right? And of course, this file does not exist. So what needs to happen, we need to go up 2 levels, and then we can pass this line in order to bring it to the correct report. So this is what we're going to do, right? So let's correct this by putting going up one level. And the way we can do it, if you notice, there's two dots right here, which is a symbol for going up one level of the hierarchy. So in order to travel to the root, we need to go up one level from where our report is stored, and up another level, and here we are in the root. So this is what we'll do programmatically: up one level and then up one level, and then we can direct the path to find the location of this R script relative to the root. So now if we execute it and knit this report, it should produce the report we want. Notice that there is no R instruction in the R markdown, but it reaches into the R script in order to find these reports. Okay, so we notice also that this pressure did not produce a plot. So let's investigate what might be the matter with it. So if we go back to our report.r, notice that the chunk is misspelled. And this is another very common mistake that you will encounter. If you misspell the name of the chunk, it simply would not recognize it. It has to have an exact match in order to identify what lines in the R script must be run in order to place them or insert them into RMD. So what I report typically is I just copy paste the names of these chunks into the R to eliminate a manual errors. So again, we need to save our R script, because otherwise the RMD would not recognize the changes. And we can knit again. Okay, now we have included the plot. So we've successfully isolated the programming component of this report into its own self-standing R script. There is one more way how we can connect it properly that I want to show you, because that might be quite useful in the future. So typically, we use templates to start our reports. So instead of directing this, we can actually do it in a separate chunk where we overwrite the setting of the directory for this RMD document, so that we can keep the same script in all our RMD templates, so we don't have to redo it. So we'll create a new chunk in which we will specify, you will use another function called knitter, called option opt knit, and not set, right? In this way, we will specify that the root directory of this report should be, and there we go, right? By default, it thinks that it's inside the folder where the RMD lives. So once again, it's in my report analysis, my report 2. So it's two folder structures down from the root. So we need to go two levels up. One level, second level. So now, when it gets to this chunk, it would think that it would, again, if we leave it as is, it would produce an error. And let's demonstrate this so that we can recognize this error again. I guess I misspelled it. Knitter opt. So yeah, I misspelled the function name, opt knit. So knit again. Yeah, so cannot open connection. Well, yes, because it asks you to go two levels up, and now you're in the root directory. And then when it gets down here, it asks you again to go two levels up, and now you're not in the root directory anymore. So now you can just use this path, because now this is relative to the root. So again, if we knit it again, it should produce the report that we want. Voila, we have successfully demonstrated the second way how we can unite or direct the RMD to find the R. It's all about remembering where the root directory is. You'll see that the templates that I provide for the class use this convention, but the one that we demonstrated before is perfectly fine as well. It all depends on your workflow. I recommend this one because it's a little bit more generic, and it simplifies your workflow if you produce multiple reports. But either one is fine as well.